Okay. Hope everybody's having a good week. Good Thursday. Looking forward to getting back out there on Saturday. Certainly, the best way to recover from an event is to respond. And we have a great opportunity to respond this Saturday against Northwestern in our Big Ten opener. Our team is really looking forward to that. I thought we practiced extremely well. And as we're continuing on throughout this process of getting to know one another and learning all about the different aspects of our program, our team this year, this is a great opportunity to handle a little adversity and then see how we respond. We haven't had adversity yet. You really don't get that until you play games. We had our first bout of adversity, not just a first quarter, but a full game. So now we have to see how this team responds with a team that's never done it before, a team that's never played together before, a bunch of new players from new places. So it'll be a great challenge and a great opportunity for us on Saturday, and we are very much looking forward to it. Questions?
Jedd, defensively, Northwestern runs a lot of quarters. It's a lot of too high into that quarters coverage. What makes that so difficult to play against as an offense?
Well, I think what it is they've committed to that. They've committed to really making that their core. Almost 3/4 of their reps are some form of shell coverage. And when you play a mix of cover 2, cover 4, and then variations of such, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take away the run game by bringing their safeties, keeping them involved when they're playing cover 4, and take away the passing game by having shell coverage and splitting the field up in quarters. But what they really do is they have an identity. They feel really good about what it looks like, and that's who they are. And Coach Braun, I think, is doing a great job. I know they've won, 6 or 7 or something to that effect. And I know he's a Big Ten Coach of the Year last year. And a lot of that has to do with the defense that he put in and how he got those guys to believe.
Having had 2 knee surgeries and gone through the recovery, I would have predicted maybe Landon Hatchett would be making his season debut this week, but he's been way ahead of that. You've had him alternating in fairly regularly at 2 positions. How is his status, and is he going to be geared towards one position one of these days?
Well, right now he's done first of all, hats off to the medical team because for him to get back as quickly as he's been able to get back and be full strength is really tremendous. He's done a great job with in the weight room as well to get his strength, his quad really as strong as possible to be able to handle all of the work. He's really done a great job of being able to play 2 positions, which is guard and center. And at this point in time, I think we're going to continue to use him at both those spots. A lot of times you're going to have your interior lineman and then you're going to have your tackles. He certainly falls under an interior lineman. And interior linemen that can snap become a huge advantage for the team in regards to personnel substitutions and whatnot. So I don't see that changing. I see right now where we're at. Now, D-Lo is coming off of, he's a senior. He's been started a lot of games at Portland State, and we try not to get him to play every snap. I think that there's a lot of value to be able to get Landon some more reps. So I think together they'll work kind of in combination. And then we've also gotten Landon in with guard Memilar, who's coming off of an ACL also. So he missed all of last year. So trying to get that combination right is still a work in progress.
Someday you see him as a pillar of the line, probably, right?
Someday I see him as our starting center. I believe that, certainly next season, D-Lo will be gone. Until that time, I think that Landon has got a great role of playing center and guard and continuing to really evolve the healthier and the more consistent he is.
You spoke the other day about not letting one loss beat you twice and kind of trying to eliminate that hangover. And I was wondering from a coaching standpoint, how do you ensure that, whether it's the messaging or the way that you practice, how do you try to make sure that isn't the case?
Well, in terms of the practice, I feel like this has been a really good week of practice. I actually feel like it's been our best week of practice. Now, that doesn't always correlate as much as you would like it to, but hopefully it will in this case. But I feel like what you've got to do is I reminded our guys, like, if you look at our team this year and who's lining up and who's playing next to one another, they've never done that before. They're all new players. Most of the guys were on different teams that were out there for the last play of the game. So, and most of the guys were on different teams that are out there on defense. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that this is a process and that we have to recognize that if we can get better as a team and not let's call a hangover effect occur mentally, be able to emotionally continue to build and be able to football-wise continue to grow and be able to play a little smarter with a little more energy and a little more enthusiasm, will that be able to give us a few more first downs, a few more stops, a few more touchdowns, a few less field goals? Hopefully it will. But we really focus mostly on the process and how we can continue to grow and build with this team, with this culture, with a brand new group of guys.
What have you guys done specifically, if anything, in practice to address the penalties you had a week ago?
Well, there's two types of penalties in that game. There were the pre-snap penalties, right, which were false starts and defensive offsides. And then there was the penalties that occurred during the course of the game, which were, let's call it a holding penalty, a PI penalty, and face mask penalties. So when it comes to the pre-snap, we've worked really hard on silent cadence. We've worked really hard on bringing more music to practice or volume to practice, playing with a louder environment to be able to focus more on the ball than necessarily on hearing a snap count. In regards to the penalties as we play, we have our DBs practice with boxing gloves a lot anyway. That's kind of always been a thing about not tugging a jersey. But there's a lot of times that until you get into the game and until you get into the moment, some of those penalties you can't really replicate it. But I hope that we've learned from it, that there are certain things we've given up. We've lost 2 touchdowns on penalties 2 weeks in a row against in the first 2 games offensively. And now defensively, we've given up, I believe it's been 8 first downs based on penalties. So we're working really hard to emphasize that if we don't give gifts, what type of program could we be? What type of team could we be? And then without losing the edge and the energy and the excitement of playing the game, we just have to have more discipline and let the ball be snapped and before we jump.
Will Rogers' average depth of target last game was 9.9 yards. That was the second highest of his career. Are you trying to utilize his downfield passing game more? And what have you seen from him that's allowed him to be successful on the downfield pass?
Schematically, we've always kind of been that type of team in terms of how we've called our offense. That's been our system, so to speak, that when you're a play-action team, a lot of times you create more chunk plays. We also feel like guys like Giles Jackson and Denzel Boston do a great job when the ball's in the air. Jeremiah Hunter, all of them have these ability to find the deep ball and make a tough catch. And then we've been able to find some explosives off of, the screen game. And that's also enabled us to be able to get to that, 10 yards a throw or whatever he had last week. So we'll continue to do that. I think Will has done a really good job of understanding what we want in this offense and then taking the first read and, playing with his feet, which is really important. That's how you have the best timing. And if you have great timing and accuracy, then usually you can catch the ball on the move.
You said you had a really good week of practice. Any details you can share of guys doing something well?
Well, I would just say that the guys came out and, you can go one way or the other after games, right? You could either let a game, hold you back because of frustration and disappointment, or you can let a game move you forward into, I can't wait to go play again. And what it felt like when we walked onto the practice field, it was I can't wait to go play again. And if you do that, you're going to run a little bit faster in one-on-ones. You're going to compete a little bit harder in a 7-on-7 or in a team period. You're going to get better looks from the scout team because they're going to feel that pressure of what the offensive or defensive timing is, which is how hard can you play and how fast can you play and what tempo can you play at. So it's just been fun to watch our guys go out and compete the last 2 days. you could clearly see that this is the first time that this team has had that adversity, right? The first 2 games we played, we didn't really have much adversity. So we showed up on Tuesday after winning a game, and then we showed up on following Tuesday after winning another game, and then all of a sudden you show up on a Tuesday after not winning, and not winning the way we lost, the way the game went. Not like there's ever a good loss or a bad loss, but you felt like the guys were wanting to go out and play, and they wanted to go out and learn and continue on in this process of how do we get better. And that's the key. We have to find ways to continue to get better when we're a completely different team than any team that they've ever played in before.
Any update on Carson Bruner and his availability?
I'm still very hopeful. I would say if this was the NFL, I'd say probable. I think that's kind of where I would put it right now, but not. I can't say it's 100%.
What are some things with Northwestern when you watch the tape that you feel they do really well?
They're very sound, very, very sound on both sides of the ball. The offensive coordinator came from South Dakota State. You could see that there's, they have the principles, both coordinators and, the defense coordinator played at Northwestern, but Braun and the offensive coordinator both came from programs that are hard-nosed, physical, tough, disciplined football teams. And you could feel their edge a little bit in that regard. I think that they play with great hands. I think they understand what teams are trying to do against them on both sides of the ball, and they have good answers. They've had some good games. They had an overtime game against Duke this year. They had a pretty convincing win last week against Eastern. And then, but you go back to last year, and they had a huge win against Illinois, and, that went into overtimes. And you go back to see them against Maryland, and Maryland was hot at the time. And you see some of the games that they played a year ago, and you could see, obviously, beating Utah in the bowl game. I'll watch that game 14-7. So they're a team that's disciplined, know what they're doing, and will be a great challenge for our team. The fans will be critical. The fans, the stands, the stadium. This is a home game, Big Ten opener, and I think it's a pretty unique and exciting experience for everybody. Certainly, it is for our staff and our players.
You talk about that discipline that Northwestern plays with. It seems like both of their primary backs run with a lot of patience, kind of waiting for those blocks to develop. What do you guys have to do as a defense to sort of speed those guys up and maybe force them into some mistakes?
You got to just not let them get the edge. If you can set the edge and fill with your linebackers and fill with your safeties, you'll be okay. If you get them into the open field because you overshoot something or you overrun a zone block or they run a stretch play and let's call it our 3 technique jumps outside, or our safety tries to jump outside and they cut it back and they run that slash play back inside, that's where you run into problems. They run the ball well. They're disciplined in the running game. They're not going to go really high tempo. So when you play those type programs, you have to have some patience, and you also have to use each one of our drives on offense are really important, because those drives on offense are going to really define, the way the game goes. Because if we get off the field quickly and they have a long extended drive, then the pressure starts mounting the next time your offense goes back out there. All right. Okay. See you after the game. Thank you.